Welcome to hour number 2, live right here on this Tuesday on the early line on SportsGrid and all across that SportsGrid network. That is SportsGrid. I am Ben Stevens. He is Donnie Rightside. Here in hour 2, we'll have a sample of everything really around the sports landscape. A new week on the PGA Tour is ahead out in Pebble Beach. We'll hear from our sports professor, Rick Horrow, who knows what he is going to say and plenty more around the sports landscape. And it starts with NFL news and notes. There's just one more football game in 2023. There are just 2 teams left standing, the Chiefs and the Niners, as we head into Super Bowl LVIII in just 12 days in Las Vegas. That means everybody else, DRS, firmly into the offseason.
Yes, they are, and we still have that one big game to go. And also, as much as we don't really like the Chiefs there, if we try to, opine back to the Patriot days, they were much worse because the Patriots were the most boring team in the NFL that kept showing up on Sundays, and we just would watch Tom Brady win, Bill Belichick not say anything, and it was the Patriot way. At least you get a little bit of flair there for Kansas City. Andy Reid's a fun coach to talk to. Patrick Mahomes is a great quarterback here. You got the whole Kelsey Swift thing. So we have a lot of good things to look forward to, which includes a great game. Because last time I checked at the FanDuel Sportsbook, this wasn't a 14.5-point line in favor of the Chiefs.
No.
It's 1.5 here for the 49ers. We're going to have a good time out there in Vegas, no doubt about it.
Some movement on that money line, now minus 124 in favor of San Francisco, plus 106 on KC, despite everybody I can find saying Kansas City is now the right side. You can't bet against Patrick Mahomes as an underdog. We'll talk about that later on in this second hour, looking at the Super Bowl MVP odds as well. Let's bring in our SportsGrid radio audience here into hour number 2, Sirius XM Channel 159. All of our radio terrestrial affiliates now in the fold as well. He is Donnie. I am Ben. You want to stay with the Harbaughs. That's what we've learned in football as of late, and that's what former Ravens director of player personnel, Joe Horitz, is going to do. He is most likely going to sign on as the new general manager for the Los Angeles Chargers, which means he worked in the same franchise as John Harbaugh, and now will make his way out to work in Los Angeles alongside Jim Harbaugh. That's how it goes in the National Football League.
Yep, and it does make some sense if your familiarity with some guy who you know you're going to get along with and you get that recommendation from your brother in one of the best organizations in football, the Baltimore Ravens. It makes a lot of sense because when you take a look at Jim Harbaugh building that franchise out on the West Coast, what does he want to be? An East Coast type franchise, blue collar here. That's what you get from the Ravens. You're going to get those big, nasty offensive linemen, crushing linebackers here, fullbacks in the equation. It's a good move here. It should work hand in hand. I'm not surprised they went this direction, Ben.
Listen, Jim and John Harbaugh have done this for many years. Mike McDonald, who, of course, was the defensive coordinator the past 2 seasons for Baltimore, who might be a new head coach here very, very soon. He was the former defensive coordinator at Michigan before he worked under John Harbaugh, and he had spent some time with John Harbaugh before joining Jim in Ann Arbor. We saw Greg Roman revitalize the offense for the San Francisco 49ers under Jim Harbaugh. He then became the OC for a long time in Baltimore under John Harbaugh. There are some natural inclinations between the brothers and how they fill out their coaching staff. Speaking of filling out a coaching staff in LA, Jim is going to bring a lot of the fellas from Ann Arbor. Jesse Minter, the past 2 years spent as a defensive coordinator for Michigan. He is more than likely going to work on the defensive staff under Jim Harbaugh in Los Angeles. Jay Harbaugh, Jim's son, is going to join the staff as well. And Ben Herbert, not Justin's father, but Ben Herbert, who was the strength and conditioning coach in Ann Arbor, a big reason for that blue-collar mentality for the Maize and Blue, certainly up front, is going to join Jim Harbaugh in Los Angeles as well. No word yet on Connor Stallions as the director of advanced scouting. But as we look at the Chargers organization, it is an optimistic offseason for LA, and there has been optimism for the Bolts pretty much every offseason with Justin Herbert. He remains. Keenan Allen should return. There is talent offensively. There is talent on the defensive side of the football. LA has the 5th overall pick as of this moment for the 2024 NFL Draft. A couple of notable free agents, Austin Eckler, Michael Davis, Kenneth Murray Jr. on the defensive side of the football as well, and a 30-1 number for the LA Chargers to win Super Bowl 59. Donnie, there will be optimism for the Bolts, no doubt, but there has always been optimism the past few off seasons. Now with Jim Harbaugh at the helm, there isn't a grace period. It's about matching that expectation virtually right away in 2024.
Yeah, it's hard catching like a moving bus, right? You're going to have to jump on there because it's a good football team, but still, you're going to have a lot of turnover, obviously in the front office and also in the coaching staff that players are going to have to get used to. It's only one off season. Hopefully, they'll all be in for OTAs and training camp. No holdouts here, but you don't see any monster free agents. Austin Eckler, as good as he is a running back here. Small of stature. Nobody wanted to pay him last year, which included the Chargers for all intents and purposes. If he comes back on a cheap deal, sure, they'll like to have him back. But we talk about that pick coming up, which I do see it's the 5th overall? I mean, you take a look at the guys that are supposed to be there mock drafts. Brock Bowers, Malik Neighbors, and maybe Joe Alt. You get one of those three on a competent football team. Like, isn't Brock Bowers like the perfect player? Like, if you said, Jim, who do you want to draft in this, regardless of position that you need on this football team? It seems like it would be Brock Bowers. And if you want to say, hey, we got to revamp that, we can't trust Mike Williams anymore, he gets hurt every year, Malik Neighbors would be unbelievable. Or you just want to go with a big, nasty offensive lineman. Joe Alt out of Notre Dame is that guy. They're going to get an unbelievable draft pick right off the bat, add in free agency. Why can't you hit the ground running? Now, again, hitting the ground running, making the playoffs and winning a round of the playoffs is very good. Making a run to the AFC Championship game, knocking off the Chiefs in that division, and winning a Super Bowl, that's a completely different story. But the expectations are high in LA. There's no doubt in that.
One of the silver linings of being a team that is expected to challenge for the postseason because of how talented your roster is and falling so short on expectation is that if you have a high draft pick, you are virtually adding, you are not drafting out of need to a talented roster. So whether it's Joe Alt or Olu Fashanu from Penn State, or one of the talented offensive pieces in Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Brock Bowers, you think of where they would enter into this LA offense. Oh boy, it is an optimistic picture. 30-1, tied for the 7th best price out of AFC teams alongside the New York Jets and the Jacksonville Jaguars. There is still one more football game to go, though, this season in 2023. And Charles Omenihu, who was huge for the Chiefs this year, at least 7 sacks throughout the regular season, tore his ACL in the AFC title game on Sunday in the Charm City against the Ravens. He is now out for Super Bowl 58. We will discuss how that impacts Super Bowl 58 in Las Vegas over these 12 days later on in this second hour. Now it's time to head out to California, the Pebble Beach Pro-Am on the PGA Tour. That's next.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, we saw a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I
favorite.
don't care if they win because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The Chargers have the 5th pick in the National Football League draft. There's a lot of different like roads that they could take with this pick. And for the record as well, there's a few sports books out there already that already have next year's Super Bowl numbers up. The Chargers are like 30-1. So there's a lot of work to do.
Sports Rage Late Night. Only on SportsGrid.
He feels like he's got unfinished business, right? He won the national championship, did what he said he wanted to do going back to Ann Arbor.
And, he coached, I think, with the Raiders as an assistant and then got the job with the Niners and then went to title games, went to Super Bowls, lost to his brother. And I think you're right, unfinished business, go back, try to win a Super Bowl.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Purdue on the road in a very difficult place to win in Piscataway, New Jersey. Not in Jersey Mike's Arena, but in the Rack. And it was tight.
You still have to win these games. Like, you can talk about even equate it to the NBA. Like OKC just rolling into Detroit, going, yeah, this is going to be an easy victory, and not coming away with the W because you're not focused here. Good move there for the Purdue Boilermakers. You can take a look at Zach Edey.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
One that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Live right here on this Tuesday on the Early Line. I am Ben Stevens. Donnie right side is here, and joining us live from Northern California, right along the coast, Keith Stewart is here on this Tuesday on the Early Line on SportsGrid to look at one of the marquee events early on in any season on the PGA Tour, the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am at one of the best sites you will see in all of the world of golf. That, of course, is Pebble Beach. Keith, thank you so much for waking up bright and early out there on the West Coast to join us here on TEL.
Well, I'll tell you what, much like having to get up at 6 a.m., this event has new life. You know, it was on life support for a couple years there, but a $20 million purse, a new format, and boy, the place is buzzing.
So let's talk about that new format, Keith. For the third consecutive week on tour, it's not just one golf course that these PGA Tour players will play. What can we expect to see with the format at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am?
Well, the first thing you could expect to see is a lot less of Bill Murray and Macklemore in the coverage, which I think we're all wishing for. The AMs, it's still a Pro-Am, the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, but we're only going to play 2 golf courses the first 2 days. It's an 80-man field for this signature now PGA Tour event. Again, the purse, $20 million, $3.6 million for first place. They're going to play Spyglass Hill one of the first 2 days, and then they're going to play Pebble Beach the other day. The AMs leave over the weekend. So all the 80 have an AM partner. The amateurs leave over the weekend. We get Pebble Beach in its glory all weekend. Just the golfers against the elements. And let me tell you something, it's not great out here, guys, when it comes to the weather.
Let's talk about those elements, because so many times we try to handicap a tournament here, and it's based on sometimes where you have your get-off times, which means if you play in the morning and the winds are down and maybe non-rainy conditions, you can score low. Are we looking, as you alluded to, are we looking at any weather conditions that could creep in this weekend at Pebble Beach?
Well, the meteorologists expect a little more than 3 inches of rain this week, starting on Wednesday.
Wow.
Remember last year, Justin? Yeah, it's going to be a sog fest out here. The average high temperature during the week, during the tournament, is only going to be 55 degrees. So it's going to be chilly and damp. Now, thankfully, Pebble Beach is one of the shorter golf courses on the PGA Tour, but at the same time, we're playing right against the Pacific Ocean. It's really going to be a test this week. You got to remember last year, Joe's, we had a Monday finish because of the elements. I think that you really got to be, to steal a term from horse handicapping, you really got to have a mutter this week. It's going to be cool. It's going to be damp. And I'm really looking for guys that have previous experience here.
So when you're looking to brave the elements out there, who do you need? Some of the best golfers in all of the world. It is a marquee event. It is a stellar stellar field this week at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am. Rory McIlroy is the favorite, plus 750, just 50 cents in front of Scotty Scheffler. Then you see Xander Schauffele, Victor Hovland, a 12-1 number, Jordan Spieth and Max Homa, 18-1, and Patrick Cantlay at a 20-1 price. Keith, the best and the best in action this week at Pebble Beach. What do you make of the top of the outright odds this week?
Well, when you start right there with Rory and Scotty, I really think this place kind of mitigates their strengths. Of course, both haven't played here before. And I talked about experience, or I leaned towards that earlier. And every winner since 2006 has had at least a top 21 finish prior to them winning. So you need a little experience here. Both Scotty and Rory haven't played in the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. They did play in the 2019 U.S. Open, but that's a different golf course at a different time of year. Rory's a bomber. This is not a bomber's paradise. We're mitigating the driver for him. I don't like Rory as a play. And then, of course, Scotty, these small Poana greens are very challenging. The winners here gain, on average, about 3 strokes against the field with the flat stick. That's not Scotty's forte. I go a little bit further down the board, and I like guys that have a lot of great experience here, like a Jordan Spieth. Jordan's played here 11 starts. He has a win in 2017. He has a bunch of top 10s recently. Since he got his game back, I think that Jordan's definitely got to be one of the favorites here. And Max Homa, he's definitely, on the early line, he is one of my early leans this week, guys. Max Homa went to Cal nearby. Max loves to win in California. He's great on POA. And, when it gets ugly this week, I think that he's one of those guys with his ball striking. He was awesome last week at Torrey. I think he's going to be great again this week as well.
Keith, if we take a look at this tournament, and again, using the 2 golf courses here, so many times as handicappers, we'll go back 5 and 10 years to see what the scoring conditions were, who won those tournaments, who's comfortable there. Is it a different adjustment to your handicaps here now using the 2 courses?
It's not going to be a tremendous difference. I think the elements are going to play more of a role here than anything else, Donnie, to be honest with you. Keep in mind, if you're going to get into all the fantasy leagues and you're going to bet people head-to-head, Spyglass plays about a shot and a half harder than Pebble Beach does. So when they go out to Spyglass Hill, in both courses, neither of them are protected. Both of them are along the Pacific coastline. So when the wind kicks up, when the rain kicks up this week, both are going to be a challenge, to say the least. But Spyglass is typically much harder. It was the 8th hardest course on the PGA Tour last year in 2023. So I would favor when the guys – so I like the guys starting at Pebble. I think that they can get off to a much quicker start, much like we talked about the Amex a couple of years ago, starting on the easier golf courses. Mm-hmm. And then maybe they find their rhythm. They hit Spyglass on Friday, and then they get the relief again on the weekend. And again, I can't overstate this enough. Like guys like Max Homa won at TPC Potomac 2 years ago in a total rain and cold fest that I was at down there in the DMV. You got to have the willingness to really want to fight through these elements because, guys, I've been on the property. It's soft, it's damp already, and it's not warm.
So, Keith, you mentioned some of those early leans here on the early line. Let's run through the rest of the card, or at least some of your early thoughts this week out at Pebble as you go deeper into those odds boards, whether it be deeper down the outright odds or into those finishing positions, top 10, top 20, top 40. Give us a few names you want to highlight that you think can have a good week overall at Pebble Beach.
And one of the guys that always shows up in California is Bo Hostler. He's sitting at 60-1 on the board, but if you want to get him for a top 20, top 6 last week at Torrey, he has a 3rd and 11th in his last 2 starts here at Pebble. I also Denny McCarthy. I know he's had a bit of a mediocre start to his season by his standards, but in these signature events or the U.S. Opens or where the condition gets tough, Denny prides himself on being an athlete. When you're on and around him in the interview room, he really likes to be a fighter. He is that type of guy. And with his putter, he's in any kind of field. So I like him in that top 20 range. You look at top 40 guys, how about Kashmir Keith Mitchell? He's playing with his buddy Josh Allen. They came in second last year to Aaron Rodgers, in the Pro-Am event. I think those guys, certainly Josh has a chip on his shoulder and would like to win. Adam Hadwin is another name. And then one guy, a local guy, Mav McNeely. He had a good week last week, top 40 there. We were talking about him at Torrey Pines. I think he backs it up again this week, top 40 for sure. If not, look at the boards, get the right number, maybe even a top 20. He knows Pebble Beach pretty much better than anybody in this field.
PGA Tour in full swing, no doubt about it. Another entirety here gets underway this Friday with Live Golf and some defections coming over to the Live Golf Tour. Tyrell Hatton moves over and looking there to start in Mexico this weekend. Any thoughts there on some Live Golf here, Keith?
I tell you, Live Golf just baffles me. Tyrell Hatton's still in the field here, and he's going to be at Mayakoba. You just never know what's going to happen there. You go to their website, they start this week. They spent, $500 million on John Rahm, and they don't even have him listed on their website, nor does he have a team. Is Hatton going? Everything points towards that. But as far as, if we were hoping for Live Golf to get their act together this year, I just don't see it. You can get excited, though, guys. If you're in Vegas next week, Live is playing their second event of the year at Las Vegas Country Club. So maybe you can go check it out. Maybe you could give them a couple suggestions on, I don't know, how to help out SportsGrid and help us handicap them.
There you go.
Trying to align with Super Bowl weekend in Las Vegas. John Rahm still looking for a team as one of the newest members of Live Golf. Keith Stewart, thank you for joining us here on this Tuesday on the early line. Enjoy, hopefully, some better weather this weekend out at Pebble. We're back here on TEL with our sports professor, Rick Horrow, up next.
Introducing Sports Injury Central's new feature, The Injury Edge, your NFL matchup cheat sheet. See all the significant injury mismatches broken down by offense and defense to highlight where the advantages lie. All for only $2.99 a week. How can you even consider making a bet or setting your fantasy lineup without knowing the injury mismatches? Go to sixscore.com today and get this week's Injury Edge.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I can see why people would bet Boston at minus about 45. But I think the two of them are so exciting and so talented and so awesome. I went with and made the bet of the over 6.5.
There are issues with football character. Always doing the right thing, being in the right spot, being highly coachable. Why do they continue to fail in the big moments? It's football character, Pharrell. It's not a talent issue. That has nothing to do with it.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I'm not going to lie. I'm a Knicks fan. I feel bad for Obi Toppin. I mean, Obi Toppin was backing up Julius Randle, and then he got his opportunity. Indiana was playing great. Didn't play deep. Brought him off the bench. And now they got Pascal Siakam, and now he's going into a free agent year. So Obi may be looking for a new home. But I do like that fast break if it's Halliburton with Obi and Siakam.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on Sports.
Live right here on this Tuesday on the early line on SportsGrid. Rick, we're live on national television. Stop all the chatter behind the scenes. I'm Ben Stevens. He's Donnie Rightside. He literally needs no introduction because you just hear him rustling regardless. It's our sports professor, Rick Horrow, here on this Tuesday. I am counting down the minutes until I leave Las Vegas so I don't have to see you anymore because we'll be together next week out at the site of Super Bowl 58. I kid. I actually look forward to seeing you. We had a lovely time last year out in Phoenix. I look forward to doing the same in the other desert.
One massive group hug. And by the way, I'm going up to, you don't care. I'm going to say it again. So NHL All-Star game, this is going to be a big weekend in Toronto. And then Vegas for Boston for Celtics and Beanpot. Never done that. And then I'll be in Vegas. So we'll cover all of that stuff. And we have a big agenda. We'll find a burger place to keep wrong side happy. And then we'll, the Live event, as we just heard, is there. We ought to just go by and see what it's like and see how they're glomming onto the Super Bowl. What do you think? Yeah,
I don't know if we can for a couple of reasons. The last time that we were together at a Super Bowl, we were at the WM Phoenix Open out there at TPC Scottsdale. We have allegiances to the PGA Tour. This show is sponsored by the great FanDuel Sportsbook that is a partner with the PGA Tour. I don't know if I can go to the upstart Live Golf Series and give them any of my respect, Rick. And I really took you as a loyal guy anyway.
Well, I'm a loyal guy. But maybe we can sneak in, although the last 30 seconds probably minimizes the chances of that. And we would do it as a journalist, right? I mean, are you gonna, they're second tier NFL sponsors, but does that mean you're not going to go to the USFL, XFL, United Football League opening if having the chance? I think it's important to cover this stuff and telling it like it is. Wrong side, what do you think?
I do. I like where you're going on this. And by the way, you're a lawyer. You can broker this deal. PGA to Live Golf to FanDuel. It's a lot of money in that. A lot of billable hours, Rick.
Consider it brokered.
Yeah, a lot of billables.
Consider it brokered. And, Ben, who has been so kind of arrogant, in not including me in his plans, I guess maybe we should do it. Maybe we should do it. All right. Sorry.
Interesting way to try to get somebody to hang out with you by calling them arrogant, but I'm neither one for decorum. Anyway, Rick, as we actually do something of substance here on the early line on this Tuesday, of course, we are 12 days away from Super Bowl Sunday in Super Bowl 58 in Las Vegas. It's a rematch of 5 years ago in Super Bowl 54 between the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers. Rick, let's start with the two-pronged approach to this. Is the league happy with this Super Bowl matchup in Las Vegas? Do you think the people are happy to see a rematch of Super Bowl 54?
I'd love to see Detroit. I'd love to see the man of the people kick one of those two field goals instead of going for it fourth down. But that's between history and the city of Detroit. No one will ever know. The league is happy that it is a close game either way, say the bettors. But, look at all the close games in the 80s and 90s that got to be blowouts early. So we don't know. But, yes, I think the bottom line is that the Kansas City Swifties have added $331 million of brand value to the Chiefs and therefore the NFL. And everybody's going to wait for the post-game ceremony if the Chiefs win to see what happens with maybe a fiancé thing. So that will be the biggest celebration in the history of the world. I'll just tell you that. And then second is the Niners, the team of destiny. It's always a good storyline. But then from the Niners' perspective, they just leveraged in Levi's for a next 10-year extension. Remember, there was a first 20-year deal when the stadium opened to be Levi's Stadium. It was up there in the SoFi category of dollars and naming, even AT&T. Now the dollars are up there even higher, and they extended 10 more years than they did before. So next week, we're going to cover a whole lot of top 10 business issues from the Super Bowl, and where better to do it than the epicenter of mega events, Vegas.
You take a look at money, and the Super Bowl obviously goes hand in hand. The Taylor Swift effect, of course, the NFL certainly loves that, brings more people, more viewers into the tent. But also, Rick, I was seeing some numbers that were astronomical yesterday, and not including the ratings. minimum $9,000 to $10,000 a ticket, not to sit in the club box, not to sit at the 50-yard line, just to get in the building in Las Vegas. That is an unbelievable number that seems, Rick, to be rising every single year. But now it's in Vegas. There had to have been a bump for just the game being out there.
Very much so, and that's the secondary market. Let's remember the face value. Kind of holding up for my local speeches here in the South Florida Super Bowl II, so you remember that. It was $12.50 a face, 50-yard line. Today, there's a 12 and a 5, just 3 more zeros. That same face, be quiet. $12,500 face on it. And that's even before the scalpers, secondary market gets a hold of them. And that's before the Swiftie effect compounds the second week when everybody wants to get in just to see her there, whether she's in a suite or on the field after the ceremony, no matter what. And so this is big for the NFL because it's bringing in anywhere from 15 to 35% more demographics than just I'm watching the game because my husband or significant other who's a sports fan watches. This is big leagues.
The only person with a busier travel itinerary than our sports professor, Rick Horrow, is Taylor Swift, having to fly from Japan back to Las Vegas to be there in time for kick on Super Bowl Sunday. Rick, throughout this NFL postseason, we have seen record TV viewership in the divisional round. It was more than 50 million people that watched the Chiefs play the Buffalo Bills in Western New York. We're still awaiting the final numbers from Conference Championship Sunday between the Chiefs and the Ravens, and of course the Lions and the 49ers. As we get ready for Super Bowl 58, do you expect it to be one of, if not the most watched Super Bowls in the history of the NFL?
Yeah, and for a couple of reasons. First of all, the legacy, the storyline, the Swifties, which is a big deal. And then the second piece of this is that we're starting the more sophisticated counting of folks. 3-5 years ago, if you're watching a game in a church or a bar, you get one vote, one watch, a church, a bar, and then even if there are 100 people in there, it's different today, especially with streaming and especially with the executives of the networks forcing the real true count. Why is that important? Well, when the ratings are higher, obviously the ad rates are higher, and everybody's, $5 to $7 million, a 30-second spot goes to 8 to 9 to 10. So we're going to see more ratings because of methodology and business increases, and also the Swifties.
Rick, by the way, getting a Super Bowl bid here, obviously very lucrative for the stadium, for the town, and whoever gets that here. Super Bowl 59 next year goes to New Orleans. Then we go back to that West Coast swing, Levi Stadium and SoFi Stadium. What goes into the bidding process in order for a city to land a Super Bowl?
2 words, money. Actually, it's more than that. The host committees of each community know how to deal with the bidding process. There's a guarantee of room nights at a discount. There's a guarantee of tax abatements at a sales tax discount at the state legislature. And then there are subsidies for travel and other things. So the NFL host committees give the community a pretty good bit of leverage when they start. Now, this is important. FIFA announces its cities and locations for the World Cup at the end of this week, 2 years from now. 11 cities are bidding for top honors. That's going to scramble. And it's also going to see which of these cities become the epicenter for teams. Basically, one of the only cities that is kind of left out of that is Vegas because they don't have an existing soccer deal, but they should be there. Every one of these other cities where teams are involved are also bidding for World Cup finals. Dallas, Miami, San Francisco, New York. So watch that. And then we're going to see the economic impact of subsequent Super Bowls as well. It's a big deal, obviously, and we'll get into more of that next week from Vegas.
I can't wait to sit down with you and run through all the numbers that are going to lead from the economic impact in Las Vegas from Super. Why are you laughing, Donnie? That was very genuine out of me. No?
I like that. That's pretty good.
No,
I don't know. It's a little sarcastic here from my end.
I know why. Because we can't tell sometimes what's genuine and what's not. But that's okay. Go ahead.
That was very genuine. You know what's even more genuine out of me is giving you the final minute and a half here of this segment to go on your soliloquies, but I ask you one final question. Right. We got word this week from ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski that the NBA commissioner, Adam Silver, is expected to sign a contract extension that will take him through the end of the decade. What does this mean, Rick Horrow, for the future of the NBA?
Stability, and more stability. You know, Gary Bettman is the longest tenured commissioner and will celebrate his, he started his tenureship. He started in 1993, and I'll see him in Toronto at the NHL All-Star, honoring stability. It is important for a commissioner to have the ability to make a major decision, have calls with all of the owners, because these guys don't get extended unless they know how to communicate, and then basically understand that the owners have your back. Gone are the days of speculating whether these commissioners represent the players or the owners. We know they're hired and fired by the owners. And the players understand, because of leverage purposes, get a guy who feels like, or gal, they can do a labor deal, kind of like ex-labor secretary and current NHL Player Association guy Marty Walsh, who was the mayor of Boston. He and Gary Bettman are friends now. Same thing now with the NBA, and find some stability. And the same thing with Roger Goodell and the guys on the NFL players side. And the same thing with Rob Manfred. If you find a stable commissioner, what it does is it significantly enhances the value of the league and its individual teams. And if you want to know why that's relevant from the football side, what do you have to do? You watch me in Vegas, and you watch our boys coming right back from commercial, because they're going to blow you away, as they always do.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev. Go run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, we saw a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division favorite.
I don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro football today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The Chargers have the 5th pick in the National Football League draft. There's a lot of different like roads that they could take with this pick. And for the record as well, there's a few sports books out there already that already have next year's Super Bowl numbers up. The Chargers are like 30-1. So there's a lot of work to do.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
He feels like he's got unfinished business, right? He won the national championship, did what he said he wanted to do, going back to Ann Arbor.
And, he coached, I think, with the Raiders as an assistant, and then got the job with the Niners, and then went to title games, went to Super Bowls, lost to his brother. And I think you're right, unfinished business, go back, try to win a Super Bowl.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Purdue on the road in a very difficult place to win in Piscataway, New Jersey. Not in Jersey Mike's Arena, but in the RAC. And it was tight.
You still have to win these games. Like, you can talk about even equate it to the NBA. Like OKC just rolling into Detroit going, yeah, this is going to be an easy victory, and not coming away with the W because you're not focused here. Good move there for the Purdue Boilermakers. You can take a look at Zach Edey.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
One that's been to a sporting event. The atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start, so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
We end out this second hour. No, we don't. It's only 9:40. My bad, missed the clock. Here we are. We're live in the second hour on the early line on this Tuesday on SportsGrid. He is Donnie. I am Ben. You just heard from Rick Horrow that he'll be out there in Las Vegas next week for all the Super Bowl 58 festivities. So will we. Bright and early on a Monday morning, we will be live to take you through all that you need to know for Super Bowl Sunday and that Super Bowl 54 rematch between the Chiefs and the 49ers, this time out in Las Vegas at Super Bowl 58. So, Donnie, as we look at the Super Bowl 58 odds, we correlate what we are seeing right now in the game numbers to those Super Bowl MVP odds here for Super Bowl 58 as well. As we have shared, it's a very short spread. It's 1.5 in favor of San Francisco. When we spoke yesterday, it was minus 118 money line for the 49ers, even money plus 100 for KC. A little bit later in the afternoon, it was minus 112 and minus 104, only 8 cents of difference. Now that money line is working a little bit more back to San Francisco at minus 124, plus 106 other side for the Chiefs. The total remains at 47.5. Whatever way you slice it, it is expected to be as competitive of a game as you could hope for in the final football game of an NFL season on the Super Bowl stage. But, Donnie, because we have 12 days to dive into every single angle and react to what we are seeing, getting ready for Super Bowl Sunday in Las Vegas, do you make anything of the couple of cents we have seen in the money line movement over the past 24 hours?
Just normal flow, and you see this a lot, Ben, right? You see the opening numbers at the FanDuel Sportsbook. Let's just say the San Francisco 49ers at a 2.5 price, immediately bought down here in the favor of the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, even though it's only a point and a half move, some people have been waiting and say, great, I didn't like it at 2.5 or maybe let's just say 3 at that point, but I do like the San Francisco 49ers. I'll now jump in at minus ones and minus 1.5, which makes some sense for that buyback here. The one thing we have to understand also, and sometimes it's hard to quantify, and you're watching it play out, Ben, in real time. It's the Patrick Mahomes effect. If you line these two football teams up side by side and just say, okay, talent just wins out alone, the 49ers are a touchdown better than the Kansas City Chiefs. I honestly believe that. But when you have the ultimate equalizer at quarterback, the most important position in sport being Patrick Mahomes, this is what you get here. So we'll start out the conversations once again as they've been going all the way through this early week. It's hard to bet against Patrick Mahomes, and even harder now to see that he's just going through football teams that he's supposedly an underdog to beat and winning those games, no matter how ugly, no matter how pretty it is on offense. The one thing that's hard to do, beat Patrick Mahomes in any instance here.
Listen, Donnie, I think this Kansas City Chiefs team is different than the previous 5 that we had seen also make an AFC championship, or the previous 3 that have reached this Super Bowl Sunday stage. But there is no doubt that the common denominators remain in Kansas City. Andy Reid at the helm, Patrick Mahomes offensively, and his favorite target, Travis Kelce, who has reemerged here throughout this postseason run. You could look at Mahomes on Sunday, 30 of 39, 240 yards, and a touchdown, and think, okay, pretty good game for Mahomes. But when he needs to play at his best, he always does. How about the 3rd and 9, 2:19 remaining in regulation? They decide to air it out. He finds Marquez Valdez-Scantling, the redemption reception, and that was it, because the Ravens could only stop the clock at the 2-minute warning, and the Chiefs had a new set of downs on the other side. They trust in Mahomes on the most significant spots, and we have seen him deliver time and again. This year's offense has not been nearly as good. Mahomes himself has not been nearly as prolific as the MVP season from a year ago, and yet here they are in a Super Bowl game once again. And Patrick Mahomes, although he is playing as the quarterback for the underdog currently, is the favorite to win Super Bowl 58's MVP at plus 140. 60 cents in front of Brock Purdy, a 2-1 number for the quarterback for the Super Bowl favorites, the San Francisco 49ers, and Christian McCaffrey at plus 450. Donnie, let's start at the top, because there's 3 players right now at a plus 450 price or shorter before you fall all the way off to Travis Kelce at a 21-1 number. How do you examine the top of the Super Bowl 58 MVP odds?
Interesting. That's the best word to use. And the reason I bring that up is let's just go back, 1 week previous, Ben, because here's always the adage in the Super Bowl, right? The superstar player is typically going to get that trophy. Hey, I'm going to Disney World. It's usually a superstar. Very rarely do you see that commercial pop up on the screen like, never even heard of that football player who just won the MVP. We know it's the primetime performances in the biggest moments, and particularly the quarterbacks that usually get it. So what are we taking a look at Super Bowl 58? Patrick Mahomes plus 140 price, followed by Brock Purdy at a 2-1 price. But as I said, that's who's supposed to win it. But let's go back to the NFC AFC championship games. Hey, Patrick Mahomes, MVP. Really? 240 yards, 1 touchdown pass. Kelsey had a monster game and caught that 1 touchdown pass. Maybe he could have won the MVP in that, but it would be hard to pass over Patrick Mahomes. Flip it over to the guy number 2 sitting here for Super Bowl 58, Ben. That's Brock Purdy. Let's rewind back a week ago. 1 touchdown pass for him. 2 touchdowns on the ground for Christian McCaffrey, a legitimate chance that it might not go to a quarterback. And I love the fact that happened in the AFC-NFC championship game. It's fresh in our minds because if Patrick Mahomes would have won that football game over the Ravens, 275 in the air, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 25 yards rushing, he would get it easy. Or if Brock Purdy, out of those 34 points, threw 3 touchdown passes and then have 3 rushing touchdowns here, he would get it easy. So it starts to open up the imagination on what could possibly take place, because the one thing we do know is Brock Purdy might get close to 300 yards passing, might exceed it, but he's not really that guy that ramps it up with 4 and 5 touchdown passes. We look at the Kansas City Chiefs offense, no longer that high-flying attack that go, yeah, he threw for 360 in that game and only 1 touchdown, but it's still 360 yards. Maybe some other viable options here coming up this week on Super Bowl 58. Looking forward to that.
So let me ask you a 2-part question. AFC championship game, the Chiefs win 17-10 outright as an underdog in Baltimore. If there was an AFC title game MVP award, who do you think wins it?
Well, honestly, I probably would go Travis Kelce last week, to be honest. Surpassing Jerry Rice in that football game, and as well getting 10 catches. What did he get? 11 targets, 10 catches in that game, I believe it was, or something similar to there, over 100 yards. Yeah, it would have been him. It would have been him for me. Yeah.
11 grabs on 11 targets, 116 yards, and a touchdown. The only touchdown Patrick Mahomes threw, 116 of the 241 Mahomes had through the air. But again, the fact we even kind of debate it, although I would agree it would be Travis Kelce, says just how significant of a game a wide receiver or a tight end has to outdo his own quarterback. But I do believe at a 21-1 number, there is some value on Travis Kelce. 2 previous Super Bowls for Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes has won the Super Bowl MVP award. I don't think there's voter fatigue, perhaps, but there is a little bit of fatigue on Kansas City. Now, same question for the NFC Championship game. The Niners win 34-31, do not cover as a 7.5-point home favorite against the Detroit Lions. Who wins the NFC Championship game theoretical MVP award?
I would have gave it to Christian McCaffrey, and also it would have got real interesting as well as you saw that final run, which basically salted the game away from McCaffrey. It landed on his head at the 2-yard line. Let's just say he lands on his head and he's fine. You know what he does, Ben? Gets right back up, goes in that huddle, and punches in his 3rd touchdown of the game. That's what happens here. And also for the 49ers, from their offensive perspective, look, I love Brock Purdy. I think he's a solid quarterback. The weapons at wide receiver and tight end, fantastic. But isn't the best play in football outside the tush push if you're inside the 5 or 6 yard line? Just give it to McCaffrey. Worst case scenario, it takes 2 carries, not 1 carry for him to get into the end zone. But last week, I would give it here, even though we had that Brock Purdy drive where I know he was sensational in the second half, we tend to just look at the statistical output at the end of the game. 130-plus yards there total for McCaffrey, 2 touchdowns. I would give it to him.
That's what we expect out of Christian McCaffrey. Literally expect. His combo prop was 126.5 rushing plus receiving in the NFC Championship game against Detroit. He had 90 on the ground over his rushing yards prop of 86.5. He had 42 through the air over his receiving yards prop of 35 and a hook and 2 touchdowns. And yet it was the quietest 132 scrimmage yards in a conference title game you might ever see. But again, I give the nod to run CMC. I would agree with you as well. Brock Purdy, the 21-yard scramble on third down late in that fourth quarter to maybe seal the game for San Francisco to lead to that final score that made it a 10-point margin and a 2-score lead over Detroit was huge, but in the overall component of the game, it is Christian McCaffrey. 6 of the last 10 winners of a Super Bowl MVP award have played quarterback. 10 of the last 14, a quarterback as well. We have seen 2 wide receivers in the last 6 years or so. Cooper Kupp, Super Bowl 56 for the Rams. Julian Edelman, of course, for the New England Patriots. We have seen 2 defenders win it in the last decade as well. Von Miller for the Broncos, Malcolm Smith for the Seattle Seahawks. So let's go to those defenders. Because again, Donnie, this Chiefs team playing in this Super Bowl is different from the team we have seen the last 3 times reach the Super Bowl in the previous 4 seasons. It is defense first. This Chiefs team averages only about 21.5 points per game throughout the regular season. That was 15th out of 32 in the NFL, middle of the pack. Every other year, the Chiefs have averaged better than 28 points per game. That's a top 10 offense. So if it is a game that stays under 47.5 and a Chris Jones continues to make plays or Jarius Sneed stands up in moments that matter most, as we look at the defensive players in Super Bowl MVP odds, could a Nick Bosa at 100-1 or a Chris Jones at 140-1 or a Fred Warner that anchors that San Francisco defense at 180-1 make any sense to you as a long shot type of play?
Probably more looking along from a defensive prospect from the linebacking position for the San Francisco 49ers. And why did I say that? Look, it's really hard to sack Patrick Mahomes. Even if you get a clean pass rush off there, he's talented enough to either shake out of that, run for a first down, or just smart enough to throw the football away. But if you are taking a look at like a Werner at linebacker, you get an interception. Maybe you get lucky and get a sack, a forced fumble, 14 tackles. Maybe you take one to the house. I think that builds up because you can look forward to a defender getting an interception and returning it to the house, but you always look at statistics as well. And sometimes when that interception and maybe that defensive touchdown come is a big deal. Fourth quarter, game tied 21-21, defender interceptions and runnings it back. He might get it just on that play alone. But I want volume. Like, I need to see that big stat line because Chris Jones is a great defensive lineman, but let's be real. He's not making a lot of individual tackles. And if he does get a sack and a half, yeah, that could be big, but a sack, oh, okay, that's nice. But again, a linebacker, 15 tackles, forced fumble, interception, chance of a touchdown here, that could go a long way. So for me, I would be looking at the 49ers linebackers having an impact in this football game as a legitimate chance to possibly take an MVP down from a non-offensive position.
And again, quarterbacks still get the benefit of the doubt. 10 of the 14 recent Super Bowl MVP winners have played quarterback. There is still a really good chance that if the Chiefs win, it is probably Patrick Mahomes, even if Brock Purdy is not outstanding, but good in a Super Bowl 58 victory. He would have the nod to be the Super Bowl 58 MVP. He has played well in the most critical junctures in the 2 playoff wins for the 49ers so far this postseason. We hear from you to round out this second hour on the Western Conference in the NBA next.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev. Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I don't care if they win because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The Chargers have the 5th pick in the National Football League draft. There's a lot of different like roads that they could take with this pick. And for the record as well, there's a few sports books out there already that already have next year's Super Bowl numbers up. The Chargers are like 30-1. So there's a lot of work to do.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
He feels like he's got unfinished business, right? He won the national championship, did what he said he wanted to do going back to Ann Arbor.
And, he coached, I think, with the Raiders as an assistant and then got the job with the Niners and then went to title games, went to Super Bowls, lost to his brother. And I think you're right, unfinished business, go back, try to win a Super Bowl.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Purdue on the road in a very difficult place to win in Piscataway, New Jersey. Not in Jersey Mike's Arena, but in the RAC. And it was tight.
You still have to win these games. Like, you can talk about evenly equated to the NBA. Like OKC just rolling into Detroit going, this is going to be an easy victory, and not coming away with the W because you're not focused here. Good move there for the Purdue Boilermakers. You can take a look at Zach Edey.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
One that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Live right here, closing out this second hour of a Tuesday on the early line on SportsGrid. I am Ben Stevens. He is Donnie Rightside, and the SportsGrid app is there for you as well. You can scan the QR code on your screen in a matter of moments. All of our insight and information available in the palm of your hand. We love hearing from the people, and that includes in the NBA, where right now there's an interesting phenomenon out in the Western Conference. A matchup last night in Oklahoma City between the two teams that entered the day tied for the best record and that top spot in the West. Minnesota won. They now have the best record by themselves. Denver kind of sandwiched in between the Timberwolves and the Thunder. But who has a better chance of truly contending for a conference championship between the up-and-coming T-Wolves and Thunder? That was the question in Fade the Public. At SportsGrid TV on Twitter, who has a better chance of winning the Western Conference Championship this year? At SportsGrid TV, between Oklahoma City Thunder and the Minnesota Timberwolves. The T-Wolves, 56% of this vote, edging out OKC at 44%. Donnie, the T-Wolves right now have the slightly better record and a game advantage over OKC. Are you agreeing or fading the public?
I'm going to agree with the public right now with the Minnesota Timberwolves. And no, it's not a one-game runoff of last night. Well, we saw it last night. The Timberwolves won. I thought the Timberwolves would win that basketball game, but also you had the Oklahoma City Thunder at a rest disadvantage last night. They didn't play terribly, but certainly they didn't play great outside of SGA. So 56% to 44% right now on the Timberwolves. I think that makes the most sense. That's the way I went here. Now, granted, long-term, do I actually think either one of these teams could win the Western Conference? That's a different discussion, but the poll specifically asked OKC and or Minnesota. Right now, if we're looking from a playoff team, I always lean on defense, and Minnesota's a better defensive team than OKC. That's got my vote here, but it is pretty close with the public.
We have to talk about the odds correlation to this poll. We'll do that when Hour 3 starts in less than a minute.